I don't know how much longer I'll have the nerve to keep this file on my computer. Honestly, I shouldn't even be talking about it, let alone uploading anything that could spread it. But the thing about horror is, once you've seen it, it doesn't matter if you delete it. It stays with you. It crawls into your head and waits for the moment you think you're safe. That's why I need to tell you what I saw. Not because I want to, but because once you hear it, you won't sleep the same way again. It started with nothing more than curiosity. My laptop sits at the foot of my bed. I use it for everything: work, streaming, late night scrolling. Like a lot of people, I forget to close it before I pass out. The little green light next to the webcam sometimes flickers, and I'd always assumed it was just software updates or background processes. Nothing unusual, but one night, half asleep and restless, I set the camera to record while I slept. I didn't even know why. Maybe boredom, maybe paranoia, maybe some part of me already sensed something was wrong. The next morning, I clicked play. For the first 10 minutes, nothing happened. Just me, tangled in blankets, shifting in the way people do when they dream. Then at 12:47 a.m., I stopped breathing, not for a second. 4 minutes. My chest didn't rise. My mouth didn't move. And yet, in the corner of the frame, I was standing. Not lying down, standing, at the far end of the room. My face turned toward the lens. The thing is, I don't remember moving. I don't remember getting up. And the me in bed never stirred. Two versions. One motionless, the other staring straight ahead. What would you do if you saw yourself doing something you don't remember? Or worse, if you saw yourself doing something no human should be able to do? I should have stopped there. I should have closed the laptop, deleted the file, and convinced myself it was a glitch, but I didn't. And because of that, I've seen things I can't explain. Things that have left marks on me that no one else can see. I'll tell you everything. But first, you need to understand how normal my life was before it started to unravel. Before I get too deep into this, I need you to understand one thing. My life wasn't the kind of story that should have ended up like this. I wasn't a ghost hunter. I wasn't one of those people who believe every creak in the walls means spirits, or who spends their weekends watching shaky footage of haunted asylums. I was boring. Painfully, comfortably boring, and for a long time, I liked it that way. I worked from home, glued to my laptop. Deadlines, Zoom calls, the usual grind. If anything, the biggest mystery in my life was whether my Wi-Fi would hold long enough for me to finish a meeting without freezing mid-sentence. I lived in a small one-bedroom apartment, nothing fancy, just a neutral-colored box that looked like every other unit in the building, the kind of place you forget the moment you walk out the door. My days had a rhythm: wake up late, shove instant coffee down my throat, drag myself through tasks while half-scrolling social media, then reward myself with midnight binges of horror movies I'd already seen 3 times. That's what I mean by boring, predictable. The only real chaos was the growing mountain of laundry in the corner of my bedroom. At night, I'd leave the laptop open on my desk. It doubled as my alarm clock, so I could wake up to the blinding light of the screen screaming calendar reminders at me. Sometimes I'd doze off while watching videos, the glow of the monitor painting shadows across the walls. That was normal. Safe, still, looking back. There were little things, teeny fractures in the pattern that I should have paid more attention to, like the fatigue. I was always tired. Not the kind of tired that coffee fixes, but a bone-deep exhaustion, like I was walking around half submerged in water. People joke about being zombies when they work from home, but sometimes I'd blink and realize whole hours had vanished from my day. I'd swear I'd only just sat down. But suddenly the clock would scream that it was 2 in the morning, and then there were the dreams. I didn't think much of them at first. Everyone has bad dreams. Mine were just vivid to vivid. I'd find myself wandering endless hallways, every door locked. Something breathing just a few steps behind me, no matter how fast I ran. Sometimes I'd wake up with my heart hammering like I'd sprinted a mile, drenched in sweat. But the worst part wasn't the running. It was when I dreamed of my room. The exact same room I was sleeping in, same walls, same desk, same bed, only in those dreams. There was always someone else there, a figure, standing just out of reach, watching. I told myself it was stress. Too many horror marathons. A fried brain from staring at screens all day. The human mind is a master at tricking itself, right? When I complained to my friend Evan, one of the few people I still talked to regularly, he laughed it off. "You're basically living in a coffin with Wi-Fi," he told me. "No wonder your brain's cooking itself." He suggested melatonin, joked that maybe I was becoming one of those YouTube sleepwalking compilation stars. I laughed too, because the alternative was admitting how uneasy it all made me. Still, the feeling lingered, a kind of low hum under the surface of everything. Sometimes I'd catch my reflection in the black screen of my laptop, and for a split second, I'd swear it wasn't moving in sync with me, like it blinked too slow, like it hesitated before following. But I shrugged it off. That's what I did best, shrug things off. It was easier to drown out the weirdness with noise, to keep Netflix running until my eyes blurred. I figured, as long as I ignored it, the cracks would stay cracks. They wouldn't widen into something that could swallow me whole. And for a while, that worked. Life kept its same tired pace. Work, eat, scroll, sleep, repeat. Nights bled into mornings, and mornings bled into nights. The monotony should have been comforting, but it wasn't. It felt more like waiting, like something was pacing behind the curtain, just out of sight, biding its time until I finally noticed. If I'd stopped then, if I'd broken the routine, moved apartments, gotten out into the sunlight more, maybe none of this would have happened. Maybe those dreams would have stayed dreams, nothing more than neurons misfiring in the dark. But I didn't change anything. I carried on. And that's why I know now. What came next wasn't random. It was waiting for me. The night I set that camera to record wasn't an accident. It was an invitation. The first night I actually checked the footage, I wasn't expecting anything. Honestly, I figured I'd be greeted with hours of boring nothing, meat tossing, turning, maybe snoring in ways I didn't want proof of. If anything, I thought it might help me figure out why I kept waking up tired, like some sad DIY sleep study. The recording started out exactly as dull as I'd imagined. Grainy, low light, video of me tangled in blankets, shifting every now and then. The hum of my desktop fan. Silence. At one point I rolled onto my side and muttered something into my pillow. Embarrassing, sure, but nothing worth keeping. But then, at 12:47 a.m., something changed. The light from the screen flickered. Not a normal flicker. Not the kind you'd blame on a glitch or bad connection. It was deliberate, rhythmic, almost like someone was waving a flashlight across the lens. The shadows in the room stretched and snapped back, stretched and snapped back, like the walls were breathing. I froze the frame. My stomach dropped, because in that moment, you could see Misto lying in bed, perfectly still. But you could also see me, standing in the far corner of the room. At first, I thought it was a trick of the light, a shadow cast by the glow of the laptop screen. But the longer I stared, the more undeniable it became. The outline was human. My height, my build, the curve of the shoulders. The head tilted slightly forward, as though it knew the camera was on and was making damn sure I noticed. I rewound the clip 3 times. Each time, the figure was there. Each time, it didn't move. Just standing, watching. And then God, this is what made my skin crawl, it leaned forward. Only an inch or two. A twitch, like a puppet tugged by invisible strings. My sleeping self didn't stir. My first thought was sleepwalking. It had to be. I'd heard of people wandering around at night, doing bizarre things with no memory of it afterward. But how do you explain being in 2 places at once? How do you explain your body lying limp in bed while another version of you stares from the corner? I paused the video and sat back, my throat dry. My rational brain kept screaming that it was impossible. Maybe it was a trick of the lens, maybe a weird reflection. Maybe I'd fallen asleep watching something and was confusing it with reality. There were 100 explanations I wanted to believe. But here's the thing. None of them made me feel better, because as I sat there, the recording still open on my screen, I swear I caught my reflection in the black glass of the monitor, and it wasn't perfectly aligned with me. For half a second, it lagged. I slammed the laptop shut. The next morning, I tried to laugh it off. I even texted Evan. Guess who sleepwalked like a creep last night? This guy sent back a string of laughing emojis and told me to quit binging horror movies before bed. That's what I wanted him to say. That's what I wanted to believe. But the unease wouldn't leave me. It clung to me all day, like a weight pressing down on my shoulders. I kept thinking about that figure in the corner, about the way it tilted its head, like it was studying me. I told myself it was a fluke, a one-time thing. But deep down, I already knew the truth. If something wants to be seen, it doesn't stop after one night, and I was the idiot who gave it a camera. The second night I recorded, I told myself it was just for peace of mind, proof that the first clip had been a trick of the light, some glitch in the recording software. If I set up the camera again and nothing happened, I could delete the whole thing, chalk it up to paranoia, and get back to my boring little routine. That's what I told myself. But really, I think some part of me wanted to see more, wanted to confirm that I hadn't imagined it. Curiosity is a disease. When I woke up the next morning and opened the file, the pit in my stomach was already there before I clicked play. The first few minutes were calm me, shifting, the sheets rustling, the faint hiss of the fan. I leaned back, almost relieved. Maybe this would prove it was nothing. Then, at 1:13 a.m., the audio crackled. A sharp, metallic pop, like someone plugging in a mic too close to the speaker. The laptop's green indicator light flared, and there it was again. The corner of the room, me, standing. Only this time, the figure moved. Not much, just a step forward, barely noticeable at first. The sound of the floor creaking lined up perfectly with the motion. My sleeping self didn't stir. The other me tilted its head, then slowly raised a hand, like it was about to wave. I slammed pause. My mouth went dry. I replayed that moment a dozen times. Every time, it was the same, my body unmoving on the bed, and something that looked exactly like me, reaching. I told myself it had to be a software artifact, a corrupted frame, maybe a reflection of myself in the window, warped by shadows. Anything but what it looked like. I didn't tell Evan this time. He already thought I was overreacting. When I hinted that the video was weird, he replied, "Dude, your brain is fried. Close the laptop, get some sleep. That's your problem, not ghosts." I wanted to believe him. I clung to his words like a lifeline. But I still set the camera up again the next night, and the next. Every time, the footage got stranger. The figure moved more. Once, it paced slowly around the bed, stopping every few steps to glance at the lens. Another night, the audio captured faint whispers, garbled, distorted, but unmistakably my voice. And yet, every morning I woke up with no memory of moving. My sheets were exactly where I'd left them. My apartment showed no signs of intrusion. Rationally, I had nothing to worry about. Rationally, it was impossible. That's what I told myself as I kept watching, night after night. The denial became a ritual. I'd open the file, heart pounding, tell myself it was a glitch, then replay the impossible until I was too numb to feel afraid. The more I told myself it wasn't real, the more it burrowed into me. But there was one moment I couldn't laugh off. On the fourth night, around 2:30 a.m., the figure leaned so close to the camera that its face nearly filled the screen. The quality was grainy, distorted, but the features were mine. Same jawline, same mouth, same eyes. Only, the eyes didn't blink. They didn't even move. Just two dark hollows, staring straight through me. When I saw that, I slammed my laptop shut so hard the hinge cracked. I sat in the dark, shaking. The glow of the screen burned into my vision. The next day, I couldn't focus on work. I kept replaying that face in my mind, those hollow eyes boring into me. I told myself I wouldn't record again, that I'd delete the files, uninstall the software, pretend none of it happened. But that night, when I crawled into bed, I left the laptop open. The green light winked at me like it was in on the joke, because the truth is, denial isn't about believing something isn't real. It's about stalling. It's about buying yourself one more night of pretending everything's fine, even when you know it. ISN single quotes. And deep down, I already knew. If I stopped recording, I wouldn't be able to prove to myself that I was still me. So, I hit record again, and that's when things stopped being strange and started being dangerous. By the fifth night, I wasn't even pretending anymore. I wasn't setting up the recordings to debunk anything, or to laugh at myself in the morning. I was doing it because I needed to know what it would do next. That night, I set the laptop so it captured the whole room, the bed, the desk, the closet door. I even left a glass of water on the nightstand, like some kind of cheap control, to prove the footage was real. If the water stayed untouched, maybe I could cling to the idea of dreams. The next morning, I almost didn't check. My hands hovered over the keyboard for 10 whole minutes before I found the courage. I wish I hadn't pressed play. At first, it was routine. Me, asleep, shifting, muttering nonsense. The faint static hiss from the mic. Then, at exactly 2:06 a.m., the figure appeared. Not in the corner this time, on the bed. It was sitting cross-legged on the mattress, only inches away from my sleeping body. Perfect posture. Head tilted, eyes locked on the back of my skull, like it was studying me. I froze the frame, bile rising in my throat. It wasn't just watching anymore, it was closer, intimate. I hit play again. The thing leaned forward, hovering over my sleeping self. Its mouth opened, and though no sound came out of the speakers, the lips moved, forming words. Then my sleeping body responded. I watched my own lips move, slowly, in perfect time with the figures. My chest didn't rise. My eyes didn't open, but my mouth, it whispered back, repeating everything the other one said. I slammed pause. My vision swam. I rewound, played again. Same thing. Me, unconscious, muttering in tandem with the copy sitting above me. I don't remember speaking. I don't remember dreaming. But the camera doesn't lie, right? That was the first time I felt genuine fear that I wasn't in control anymore. I didn't tell Evan everything, but I gave him enough. I sent a screenshot, the figure perched on my bed like some parasite. He didn't laugh this time. Instead, he sent back, "Dude, that's not funny. Delete that. Seriously." I asked him if he thought it was edited. He didn't reply for an hour. And when he finally did, it was just, "Stop recording." That's how these stories always start. Stories. He said it like I was a cliché, like I was slipping into one of those creepypastas. I used to binge watch at 3 a.m., but the bruises on my arms weren't fiction. Yeah, bruises. Because when I woke up that morning, my wrists ached. When I pulled up the sleeves of my shirt, there were dark, finger-shaped marks. Like something had gripped me tight. My nails were clean. The sheets didn't have a single tear, but the marks were there, undeniable. The glass of water on my nightstand, knocked over, and the worst part, in the footage, the figure didn't just sit there the whole time. At 2:28 a.m., it leaned down and pressed its mouth against my ear. My body shuddered, my face contorted, like I was trying to scream but couldn't. And then, frame by frame, my body vanished, not in some dramatic puff of smoke, not with special effects. I just disappeared. 1 second, I was there, sheets rising and falling. The next second, the bed was empty. The figure stayed. It turned toward the camera, still perched neatly on the mattress. It tilted its head again, but this time, it smiled. And then, after exactly 7 minutes and 43 seconds, my body flickered back into existence. Same position, same sheets. Only difference, the bruises weren't there in the video. They were only on me. That was the breaking point. I sat in front of the laptop until dawn, shaking so hard my teeth chattered. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that grin, stretched too wide across a face that looked like mine. By the time the sun rose, I was convinced I wasn't safe. Not in my bed. Not in my apartment. Maybe not even in my own body. I tried to talk to Evan again, voice hoarse from lack of sleep. I told him about the bruises, the missing time, the smile. He was quiet for a long time before saying, "You need to get rid of that laptop." But even as he said it, I knew it wouldn't help. This wasn't about the camera. The camera just showed me what was already happening. And when I tried to sleep the next night without recording, I couldn't. Every creak of the building made my skin crawl. I kept waiting to feel that mouth at my ear again, waiting to wake up to new bruises. I caved. I turned the camera back on, because by then, the question wasn't if something was happening, it was how much worse it was going to get. I didn't want to believe I was the only one. That's the kind of thought that eats you alive. This is just happening to me. Alone, I was crazy. But if someone else had seen what I'd seen, if someone else had recorded it, maybe I wasn't losing my mind. Maybe there was an explanation. So I started digging. Forums first. Reddit, obscure message boards, the kind of sites with black backgrounds and usernames like Nightwatch and Signo-Deepay. I typed out a sanitized version of my story. Has anyone seen themselves on camera while asleep? And hit post. Most replies were jokes, cheap memes about doppelgangers but a handful weren't. One user DM'd me a video link. "Watch this before it disappears," they wrote. It was a shaky phone recording of a man asleep in a chair. The camera wobbled as if someone was holding it. For the first minute nothing happened, then the man opened his eyes, but they were solid black. His jaw unhinged slightly as though he was gasping, but no sound came out. In the background, a second man, an identical copy, stood in the doorway, watching. I watched it twice. When I tried to watch it a third time, the link was dead. Another user posted a rule list. Don't watch the footage more than twice. Don't let your reflection see you watching. Never record after 3 o'clock. A.M. They wrote it like a joke, but it didn't feel like one. I recognized the cadence, half warning, half superstition, the kind of thing people write down when they don't know why it works, only that it does. I asked Evan about it, sent him screenshots. He texted back, "Dude, this is exactly how people spiral. You're feeding it." Maybe he was right, but the deeper I went, the more I found the same patterns. People waking up tired. People catching impossible footage on cameras and webcam. People disappearing from their own recordings for a few minutes at a time. Some posted images before their accounts vanished. Others left only cryptic messages, like "it's closer tonight." I even found a thread about something called the Echo. Not a ghost, not a demon, something older. A kind of shadow self that slips into your routines, waits for you to stop paying attention, and then, what? The posts never said. They stopped before the end. I started keeping my blinds closed, covering mirrors with towels. I unplugged my laptop's camera during the day, but still recorded at night, because I couldn't stop. It was like picking at a scab. The more it bled, the more I needed to see. The strangest part was how quickly my world began to shrink. Friends stopped answering my texts. Evan's replies got shorter, colder. At one point he just sent, "You're scaring me." My work performance tanked. Days blurred together, and the only thing I cared about was what would show up on the screen the next morning. And it wasn't just me anymore. The figure, the echo, started showing up in my waking life. Not directly, not where I could point and say there, but in glimpses. A reflection lagging behind in the window. A second set of footsteps on the stairs that stopped when I did. The sense that when I blinked, the room rearranged itself by an inch. I started narrating everything out loud when I was alone. I'm making coffee. I'm opening the fridge. Like I was proving to myself that I was still here, still solid, still me. It didn't help. The forums began to vanish, one by one. Threads I'd bookmarked returned for 04 errors. Users who'd DM'd me disappeared. One morning, I woke up to find my own posts, deleted, every trace of my story gone. When I asked the moderators why, they claimed no such posts ever existed. That's when I realized whatever this was, it wasn't random, it was curated. Someone or something was pruning the evidence, cleaning up the mess, leaving only fragments for the rest of us to stumble over. And it wasn't done with me yet. I went back to the rules post, the one that warned about not watching footage more than twice. This time, a new line had been added. If you're reading this, it already knows your name. I shut the laptop and turned off every light in the apartment. My heart was hammering, because the night before, during the last recording, the figure hadn't just whispered at my sleeping body, it had whispered my name by the time I set up the camera for what I now call the last night. I already knew I'd crossed a line. There wasn't a single part of me that thought I'd wake up to nothing but static. This wasn't a test anymore. It was a confrontation. I spent hours arranging the setup. 2 laptops, both recording. My phone propped against the bookshelf for a third angle. Every light off except for the faint glow from the router, the only star in the room's artificial night. I told myself this was about evidence, proof. But deep down, I knew what it was really about. If I was going to be taken, if it was going to come for me, I wanted to see its face. I barely slept that night. Not that it mattered. Whatever happens on those recordings, my consciousness never seems to be in charge. I lay on the mattress, staring at the ceiling, whispering my own name under my breath like an anchor. The last thing I remember is my eyelids growing heavy and the faint green light of the webcam, staring back like an unblinking eye. When I opened the file the next morning, my hand shook so hard I could barely guide the mouse. The video began like the others. Me lying in bed, chest rising and falling. At 1:58 a.m., the audio picked up a low hum, like feedback or a distant generator. All 3 angles flickered at once. Then the figure appeared. Not one this time. 3. Each of them, identical to me, same clothes, same slack expression. They crawled out from the corners of the room, one after the other, moving like animals. Elbows and knees scraping against the carpet. Their heads jerked in short, mechanical twitches. My sleeping self stayed still. One climbed onto the bed. Another perched on the desk, fingers drumming against the wood in a soundless rhythm. The third hovered near the closet, just at the edge of the frame, its body glitching like a corrupted file. I fast-forwarded, then stopped, then It didn't matter. The sequence was always the same. The room bending, shadows thickening like liquid, the meeting circling. At 2:16 a.m. The one on the bed leaned close to my sleeping body and whispered something. The audio spiked. The words were backwards, but slowed down they formed a sentence. "This is not your place." Then my sleeping body opened its eyes. They weren't my eyes. They were black, bottomless. I sat frozen, watching as my own face twisted into a grin too wide for a human mouth. His hands reached up and grasped the copy's wrists. The other 2 copies stopped moving, heads turning in eerie synchronization toward the camera. And then, frame by frame, the room began to distort. The walls bulged outward like the apartment was breathing. The ceiling cracked open into a dark, endless void. The carpet beneath the bed rippled like water. All three figures began to hum in perfect unison. I wanted to stop the video, but couldn't. My mouse wouldn't move. My fingers felt locked on the screen. My body sat up, the grin widened, and as it did, the other mez stepped backward, melting into the walls, until only one remained, the one in the bed. But it wasn't lying down anymore. It was staring straight at the camera. At me, it raised a hand and beckoned. And then, impossibly, the perspective of the camera shifted. The lens, the entire frame, tilted as though the room itself had turned its head. For a few seconds, all I could see was static. When the picture came back, the bed was empty. The room was empty. The camera pointed at nothing but the blank wall. 7 minutes passed. The hum rose to a shriek, then cut out. And then I was back. I was lying in bed exactly where I'd started, eyes closed, breathing slow. The figure was gone. The walls were still. Only one thing had changed. The laptop closest to the bed was no longer facing me. It was facing the window. I rewound the footage. In the last frame before the static, a pale hand, my hand reached out and turned the camera, but my body never moved. I don't remember doing it. I checked the phone, recording next. At first, it showed the same sequence, me sleeping, the figures circling, but then it cut off at the exact moment my eyes opened. The file ended mid-frame. No error message, no corruption notice, just gone. The second laptop's footage was worse. It didn't cut out. It kept recording. But instead of my bedroom, it showed another place. A corridor, long, windowless, lined with doors on both sides. The same corridor from my dreams. The camera floated as though something was carrying it. And far ahead, at the end of the hall, a figure walked away. Me, wearing my clothes, my posture, only it didn't walk like me. Its limbs moved too slow, like time was bending around it. It never turned around. When the file ended, I realized I'd been holding my breath. My fingers tingled. I shut all three devices, unplugged the router, and sat in the silence of my apartment. My heart beat so loud, it drowned out everything else. For hours, I didn't move. I just sat there, replaying that corridor in my mind. The doors lining the walls. The way they all looked the same, like cells, like waiting rooms. When I finally got up, it was dark outside. I stumbled into the bathroom, turned on the light, and looked into the mirror. And for half a second, my reflection didn't follow. It just stood there, smiling. That was the night I stopped pretending this was about footage, about evidence. It wasn't about what I was seeing on the screen. It was about what was coming through the screen. And by then, it had already stepped 1 foot into my world. I moved the laptop out of my bedroom the next morning, unplugged it, closed it, shoved it into the back of my closet like it was a cursed object from a movie. For the first time in weeks, I slept without the green light glaring at me. No recording, no proof, just darkness. But it didn't help. The next morning, I woke up to find the closet door open. The laptop sat on the desk again, screen shut but humming faintly, like it had never been unplugged at all. My heart hammered against my ribs as I stared at it. It hadn't even powered on, but the webcam's tiny indicator light blinked once, just once, then went dark. I haven't opened it since. I don't want to know what's inside that file now. I can't. I've stopped sleeping in my bed altogether. Some nights I try the couch. Some nights I sit up until dawn, TV blaring, waiting for the sun to claw its way through the blinds. It doesn't matter where I go. I still wake up with the same feeling, like someone was standing over me, just out of sight. Sometimes I smell dirt, like a basement or old stone. Sometimes I swear I hear the faint hum from the recordings, building in the corners of the room until it fades again. Evan stopped replying altogether. His last text just said, "Don't send me anything else." Now it's just me, sitting here, writing this. I keep telling myself I won't hit upload, but my fingers are already on the keys. Part of me wants to warn you. Part of me wonders if this is what it wants, if the story spreads like a signal, like a door opening a little wider every time someone looks. I can't tell you how to stop it. I don't even know what it is. Maybe it's an echo. Maybe it's something older. Maybe it's me. All I know is that the camera records, even when it's off, that there are things on those files I will never watch, and that last night, when I walked past the dark screen, I saw a reflection staring back at me. It wasn't blinking, and it smiled. I just checked the laptop again before I started writing this. There's a new file waiting on the desktop, date stamped for tonight. The name of the file is my name. I haven't opened it yet. Would you?